Okay, let's focus now on the US men's national team transfer news and focus on which US players are on the move. We've got a lot of updates here because there's been a flurry of transfer activity for US players. There's plenty are on the move, right, with the World Cup just a few months away. That's in the back of their mind. I mean, we're looking now at the players that have already moved on this summer, gents. I mean, we've got Aronson and Tyler Adams to Leeds. Matt Turner completed his move to Arsenal. Carter Vickers went to Celtic on a permanent deal. Jordan Pefok went to Union Berlin. Horvath went on loan to Luton Town. Luca de la Torre to Celta Vigo. And then just as we're filming, just before this, Zach Steffen completed his loan move from Man City to Middlesbrough. And Shaq Moore went to Tenerife to Nashville back to MLS. So, Nick, give me a breather here. What do you think of those moves? Because there's plenty of them. And there's a lot of jostling right now amongst the US players and hopefuls to make sure they're on the plane to Qatar and in Greg Berhalter's squad.
I've got to be very careful to just not steal all of the thunder from Andy, because you could literally name all of the most of these transfers, I should say, as someone you love. I love the idea, the reports of Matt Turner going on loan. We could have two USMNT goalkeepers on loan in the championship, which I think is a good place to earn your medal ahead of a World Cup. The Luca de la Torre signing, I think we shouldn't spend too much time on it, if only because it's hard to talk about Celta Vigo, right? I don't have a ton of the familiarity with their pieces, but I love the idea of him going to that team. But the ones I think it's just going to be the easiest to focus on are Pefok and Richards. We need answers at those positions. Chris Richards even being Premier League average at that position makes me feel like we're pretty set at center back, because Walker Zimmerman's more the safe guy. Richards, Andy did a great job of laying out why Richards is the ideal player. The way he progresses the ball, the way he picks his spots. I mean, the numbers that Andy had in there. If you thought you liked Chris Richards, you're going to love Chris Richards from that. And then Pefok at Union Berlin. Look, we've seen so many times over the past few years. Yes, scoring at the Premier League is the kind of beacon for us. But if you're looking at international football, a good bellwether, a good place to start your measuring is, can you score in the Bundesliga? Can you beat down a league that is known for also being physical at center back, but also requiring a little bit of a nous, I believe is how you say it over there, at navigating that area. And if Pefok can get the job done at Union Berlin, I mean, I would go as far as to say, barring us seeing something crazy happening from Pepe or somewhere else, if you can get that job and be an informed striker in the Bundesliga, you might be starting the first day of the World Cup for the United States of America.
Absolutely. And of course, we didn't mention Chris Richards to start with, but you mentioned him there.
Oh, yes.
And he has been linked with a move to Crystal Palace. Bayern Munich have confirmed that they're in talks with Palace. At the time of filming, he looks like he's going to go there. So, Andy, you wrote a great piece on PST saying why it's a good idea. Do you think if Richards goes to Palace that he can be a starter? Because, I mean, Anderson and Mark Gahey had a really good partnership there last season. That'd be kind of tough to break into. But Richards has shown he's very versatile if he plays at right back or older midfield. So I'm just a little bit skeptical if that is the right place for him, if he needs to play at centre back ahead of the World Cup to prep for that. But for me, he's still the first choice alongside Walker Zimmerman for the USA starting lineup in the World Cup. So what do you think about that move, and Chris Richards in particular to Palace?
Yeah, it's interesting that Nick said if you thought you liked Chris Richards, you'll really like Chris Richards now. So I went into it unsure about Chris Richards, because all we've seen, or all I've seen, I'll speak for me, really is his performances for the U.S. men's national team. I don't watch a ton of Hoffenheim, where he's been on loan the last 18 months from Bayern Munich. And so I wasn't completely sure, like, what's all the hype about this guy? I see in theory what he does well and how it could translate, and how the U.S. men's national team could use that. But I hadn't seen it really applied in the way that we had wanted to see for the national team. And so I looked at some of the club numbers, and I was really, really surprised with how high he ranked among center backs across Europe's top 5 leagues over the last 365 days. He's in the 80th plus percentile in a lot of passing numbers, and it's not just short passing. A lot of it's in the middle third and the attacking third as a center back as well. His ball progression in areas of the field where he's really contributing to the attack, to the buildup of play. It's not just passing it sideways to his partner or back to the goalkeeper. He's pretty proactive as a defender. A lot of pressures on the ball, a lot of pressures in, again, the middle third and the attacking third, where going to Crystal Palace, Patrick Vieira wants to have the ball. He wants to win the ball back. And so it does feel like this is probably, whether it was Vieira himself or he was shown, Chris Richards' tape and his work or the numbers, and that Patrick Vieira must have said, I like what I see there. There's a lot to work with, I think, in the system that Crystal Palace played last season. And we should also remember that was just Vieira's first season as well. They changed over about half the team. It looks like they're trying to change over the other half of the team this summer. And so if Richards is identified as someone that Vieira truly wants in one of those roles, whatever it is, I think it's a good move, because the quality that he will face for 38 games this season is going to really be a step up. I think it'll probably be about the same competition for places in the team as he saw at Hoffenheim, but the competition over 38 games is going to be something really different. So if he's able to get any sort of game time between now and the World Cup and just kind of acclimate and stabilize himself in that situation, I think it's good for the U.S. men's national team. Obviously, there's a possibility that it doesn't work out so well. I think we have to factor that in as well. It makes it a little bit risky. But one other stat here real quick, 99th percentile, Chris Richards, progressing the ball under pressure. That is so important when you're talking about a center back in the Premier League, because what is it? It's a high pressing, high intensity, very quick game, and center backs are under a lot of pressure on the ball. Chris Richards is comfortable with that. Chris Richards is used to that. And so I came away cautiously excited about Chris Richards to Crystal Palace and what it could mean for the national team.
Well, that's pretty exciting for the rest of us if Andy's cautiously excited. So that's decent. I think you brought it up there about Palace and Vieira's philosophy and playing style. You just have to look at the other young players that he's developed over the last 12 months. I mean, Conor Gallagher was on loan from Chelsea. What a wonderful job he did nurturing his talent. Tariq Mitchell, obviously, left back, got called up to the England squad. Mark Gahey, exactly the same, got called up to the England squad and developed. And so, some of the other younger attacking talents like Michael Olise as well. So he is very keen to work with young players, take their game to the next level. That's Palace's philosophy. So there are a lot of worse places that Chris Richards could go to in the Premier League. Even if he isn't playing regularly to start with, I think he'll get enough opportunities to stake his claim. And yeah, Palace are very flexible tactically. I don't think it's the end of the world if Chris Richards comes in and plays a holding midfielder or as a right wing back or something like that for Palace. If he's playing regularly in the Premier League, he can still pretty much slot back into the centre-back position for the US and feel pretty comfortable. So I like that move. I like Zach Steffen to Middlesbrough as well. We've all been harping on about he needs to play regularly for probably the last, 2 seasons now. He's done okay for Man City for the most part, apart from that FA Cup semi-final mistake, whenever he's been called upon. But he needed this in his development. And he's 27 years of age now. He needs to go and play somewhere regularly. And Middlesbrough, watched a lot of them on their cup runs and their push for promotion from the Championship last season. Chris Wilder, we know he loves to play out from the back, fluid kind of 3-5-2 system. A lot of that depends on the goalkeeper being good with his feet. Steffen is that. It'll be a battle for him and a challenge in the Championship, something that he probably hasn't faced in terms of his career so far. But I really like this, that he's going to be primed and ready and probably have at least 20-odd games under his belt by the time the World Cup runs around. And I think this has made him my definite number one if Matt Turner doesn't go out on loan and he just sticks around at Arsenal. This is why Steffen's made this move to get ahead of Turner. I really like it. I think it's a good fit. I think Middlesbrough are going to be right at the top of the Championship. So makes sense on so many levels. And hey, it's going to struggle to usurp Ederson, right, in the future. So if he doesn't get rid of Middlesbrough, then it's not a bad place for him to play for the next few years of his career, and then maybe make that step up to a top team in England, Germany, wherever. But I really like that move for Steffen. Nick, jump in, because I know he's goalkeeper and striker and centre-back. Those are the 3 positions, right, where the US really needs players who are making these moves to make a step up. But there's a big element of risk as well. Andy mentioned it too.
Yeah, but look no further than the last time that Chris Wilder nurtured a goalkeeper. We saw Dean Henderson go on loan for Manchester United when I believe it was team of the season in League One and the Championship. And granted, it took some time. He didn't really ever edge out David De Gea, which, by the way, happens. He's phenomenal. But the profile was raised to the point where for 2 straight seasons, whether it's been Newcastle or another club, the interest in acquiring a player like that has happened. And you need that as a goalkeeper. That's the one thing that Steffen will need, Matt Turner will need as well. If it doesn't work out at that current spot, teams want to see that you've been a star at that level. It's why Ethan Horvath can get a move. It's why these other players can. And again, the World Cup matters to me. And these guys are moving because they'll have a chance to get that #1 shirt. But also, this is also about the long term. And, you never know what happens with Ederson. You never know what happens if Pep was to leave Man City and an entirely different kind of goalkeeper is required. So, Andy and I have had conversations about keepers before, so I don't know what you want to toss into the mix, but I think this is very good.
Yeah, the more I think about these 6 months or so leading up to the World Cup and where players in, kind of questionable situations are, the more I think of, the more I'm less worried about kind of the tier or the level of club that they go to, but I want them somewhere where they're going to face pressure. And going to Middlesbrough, the pressure to get to the Premier League, the expectation almost after slowly building the last couple of years to get to the Premier League, I think is going to be really good for Zach Steffen, because he can go play all the cup games, or he could play for a mid-table championship team. And we can say, the championship, that's a good place, to do your work. And it is. But then you're thrown into the World Cup. What is the World Cup? It is pressure. It is pressure of the entire world watching you. And so I just think from the mindset perspective, having the mentality, being comfortable in that pressure-packed situation, Zach Steffen, come November, assuming that he stays healthy through the first half of the season, I think he's going to be in a really good spot to, as Joe said, be the #1 for the national team.
By the way, it's 4 months until the World Cup kicks off, essentially. So there is not much time for these US players to stake their claim at their new clubs, but it's certainly very interesting and very exciting to see a lot of them moving. Obviously, with that in mind, to be in the starting lineup when the World Cup rolls around. And it's risky, but it can work out for the better in a lot of their cases.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Pefok, where we've got live games, original series, and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches, and much more.